A lot of people rolling in. Welcome, everybody. Good evening for the ones in Europe. Good morning or whatever afternoon for the ones in the US, and I don't know what it is anywhere else. So the last time the chat functionality wasn't working. Let's see if it works this time. So feel free to use it if it works, and drop where you're joining from. Just say hi. Yes, it works. Yes. But Max Sense, you send to the host and panelists. I suggest everyone, if you use the chat, send to make sure you're sending to everyone so that everyone can see. Fantastic. Oh, ATX. Nice. I love that. All right. So we're already a couple minutes in. Apologies for the slightly delayed start. So I think we can get going relatively fast. As usual, housekeeping, we'll be recording this. It's also been streamed on YouTube. So we'll send you the link tomorrow morning. So don't go crazy on note taking or anything like that. If you have follow-up questions, so we'll try to get to all the questions as we go through. We also have a Q&A session in the end. So Praveen, I think what are you doing? 20, 35 minutes type of thing, right?
Yeah, about that. Yeah.
And then we'll keep a Q&A in the end, but we'll also, I'll also integrate questions as we go through if they make sense. If we don't get to any of that, Praveen, are you in the Platform Engineering YouTube Slack channel?
No, I'm not, but add
me
there. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. We can also do a Q&A in there. Yeah. Mamadou, you already found the Q&A functionality. That's great. So if you guys have questions as we go through, the Q&A is usually the best place so that we can organize it as we as we go through things. All right. With that said, yeah, lots of people that joined. So Praveen, over to you. Enjoy.
All right. Thank you, Luca. And thank you so much, guys, from everywhere around the globe that you're joining us. Super excited to be part of this presentation and walk you through some of the goods and bads of using GitOps, especially on EKS based system. So let me start by sharing my presentation. All right. I hope you all can see my screen, right? All right. So let's start with a quick title of the presentation today: Infrastructure GitOps for EKS. My name is Praveen Kumar Kashimsetti. I'm a director of product at Rafae Systems, and we will actually talk about what Rafae does and how we are different from a lot of Kubernetes platforms out there. Quickly jumping into the agenda. So we're going to talk about a bit of like how we are getting into this Kubernetes world and microservices-based architecture. We're looking at the evolution from where we were to where we are going, and then we'll talk about what is all this what about GitOps and what are the principles to efficiently run your GitOps systems, right? And then how do you do that in an EKS context? And finally, we will look at what Rafae has done to extend this to make it easier to consume and then automate things to efficiently run your Kubernetes infrastructure for EKS and integrate it with the GitOps functionality or features that we have developed on our platform. And finally, we'll actually have some time for Q&A. But if you have questions in the meanwhile, feel free to drop it in the Q&A feature of Zoom, and we will pick as we get an opportunity. All right, quickly jumping into a brief about Rafae Systems. So we are what is called as Kubernetes operations platform. And what we do is we enable a single pane of glass for you to manage and operate your Kubernetes clusters that are deployed in any cloud. It can be multi-cloud, hybrid, on-prem, doesn't matter. We give you the same user experience and the automation capabilities doesn't matter where your Kubernetes clusters are running. We also help you continuously deploy containerized apps on top of your infrastructure, and also provide a lot of capabilities to securely manage and govern all the operations on your infrastructure, adhering to the security best practices and compliance best practices from an industry standpoint. We're also partnering very closely with AWS and Azure alike, and also we are part of the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. And recently we have contributed to the open source world as well with a service called Parallels. It enables zero trust access for your platforms. So I would definitely recommend you go and check it out. And we also work with a lot of customers, and some of these are like the big customers that we work with are Verizon, HP, Guardant Health, MoneyGram. So we work with customers across healthcare, fintech, tech sector, you name it, telecom, edge computing. So, and this is only some of the several customers that we work with. Shows the capabilities that we offer and the ease at which one can consume our services. Enough of marketing, and now let's jump into a quick introduction about me. So, like I said, I'm a director of product at Rafae. Before joining Rafae, I spent about 16 years at Microsoft. Started my career as a developer, then architected several products for Microsoft and on the Azure cloud. Finally, moving into product management, where I was fortunate to launch few of the cloud products on Azure cloud. And then I briefly spent some time on the privacy and compliance organization in Facebook, or Meta as you call it now, and then hopped on to this exciting journey with Rafae on the Kubernetes platform. Right, so you can reach out to me, email me, or reach out to me on LinkedIn. Happy to answer any questions that you might have. And then, Luca, are we doing a poll, or should we do it later? Sure.
Let me launch it. It's live.
All right.
So you want to walk people through it real quick? Do you see it?
Yeah, quickly. Yeah, I can see the poll. Guys, if you can quickly take a minute or 30 seconds to fill in the poll, and just to get us some context in terms of what kind of teams are we dealing with today, and also helps us streamline our content for future sessions as well. All right, 10 more seconds, and then we're gonna end the poll.
Interesting distribution. I'll end it.
All right, cool. Thank you, Luca. Moving on. So let's start with the evolution of software architecture, right? So let's see, how the software architecture has evolved over time. Right, and I'm sure a lot of you might be part of the journey over right from the mainframe monolithics back in the 1980s, where the entire infrastructure and the application stack was bundled together on a single server. May it be I/O processing, storage, reporting, app layer, everything, right? But then as we move, that was the way architectures were done. But then it had challenges, right? So as we moved into the 90s, what happened was people started separating certain elements, like in the client server model, where your main computing was done on the server side. However, the I/O was taken care on the client side, and they were typically connected with a high speed, sustainable local area networks. Right, and then as we moved into 2000s, right, the era of web applications, as you say, they were mainly browser based. Main computing was done on the web server, and there was layering of components, right, and all the access points I/O was happening through internet, right. And as we moved into the next era in 2010s times, right, people wanted to have a more optimized and efficient architectures, right? And that led to the birth of service-oriented architecture. Again, this was the more layering of services. It was web services based SOAP protocols, and also it was running on internet based. And the next generation of this service-oriented architecture is what led to microservices architecture, right? This consists of like more granular breakdown of services, messaging queues, REST protocols, and also based on like subdomains, high availability, high reliability, better processing, and completely internet-based, right? If you look at this evolution, right, it clearly indicates the complexity at which we are dealing with the modern applications. And as these are growing, the engineering teams are want to have an increased speed of delivery. Okay, you have a very a complex system that you have built, but you want to iteratively do upgrades or do deployments, right? To remove all these constraints, and you want it, and also to get the benefits out of this modern architecture, right? Now you want a guiding principle or a framework to manage all these complexities and still be able to properly leverage the benefits of this modern architecture, right? So that in framework or a set of principles, helping you manage these microservice based architectures or modern architecture, as you call, led to what is called as GitOps, the concept of GitOps, and how we build everything as a code, right? So this starts with version controlling, automation, declarative methodology where you have everything in config files. With all this, what we are doing is we're taking away the burden of management and giving developers time to better focus or spend more energy on the more important aspects of an architecture, which is the application code itself. So let's now dive deeper into the concept of GitOps and what are the various benefits that you can reap out of it, right? So in the next few slides, what we will cover is like what is GitOps, how it helps effectively manage applications or infrastructure changes, what kind of applications or deployment principles to the infrastructure management and configuration. How do we use infrastructure as a code, CI/CD or continuous integration, continuous deployment concepts, container management systems, and how do you manage these applications using AWS or any other cloud or hybrid environments? And finally, like how do we use it to ensure there is consistency and there are guardrails so that with pace at which you release, there might be pitfalls where you will not realize, but that might lead to a disaster. So with these guardrails, you are going to enable your dev teams and infrastructure teams alive to release faster and release consistently, right? All right, so let's see what GitOps principles and how it is related to the containers and why this GitOps principles are important for a modern architecture management, right? So back in the day, this GitOps concept was coined by the Weaveworks CEO Alexis Richardson, right? So what is the standard definition, right? So GitOps is an operating model for Kubernetes and other cloud native technologies, right? So it is a combination or set of best practices that unifies deployment, management, monitoring, and any operations on clusters and applications together, right? If you put it in a simple word, right, it is basically a path towards a developer experience for managing applications, right? All this while the developer persona and the infra admin personas were different, but then with GitOps, it is kind of bridging the gap between both and giving, a common, way of managing your applications and infrastructures alike, where, end-to-end deployment pipelines or Git workflows are applied for both development principles as well as the operations principles. Now, for GitOps to work in practice, right, there are like 4 major pillars, as you call it, or 4 major principles. Number 1, your entire system is described declaratively. What does it mean, right? So Kubernetes is one of these modern cloud-native tools out there that is managed with declarative configurations. Like you define everything through a config file, right? And that becomes your source of truth or set of instructions. And this configuration can be treated as a code and kept in the Git repository along your application source code as well. But more importantly, your entire system, both infrastructure as well as your application, it becomes a declarative configuration under the same source control. And you have a single source of truth that you are managing your system's desired state and the application standards as well, right? Next is like, so what is this desired system state, right? So, so everything, right? Like your application code, your infrastructure code, app configuration, cluster configuration, all of this is like version and controlled in your Git repository, so that any changes, right, are tracked, and like where is this deviation from the original set of configurations that you've had to begin with, and they're all stored in a common location. So it kind of trivializes rollbacks and roll forwards so that you can define what is the known good configuration, and then you either roll forward or roll back to it if needed, right? So it becomes recovery from a bad state very easy and fast as well, right? Now let's look at the third pillar, which is the automation, right? It's basically, the ability for you to apply these changes automatically to your systems. Once you've updated and approved your desired state, then you take this tooling for automation and then apply those principles, apply those configurations automatically and detect if there is a drift, and then, revert as you see fit. Right. And finally, you need a system which is self-healing. Otherwise, it's going to be a massive overhead for you to manage these modern complex systems, right? So once your system is declared as this is like the baseline, or this is the source of truth in your version control, then you can have like agents which will inform you whenever there is a drift, and then you can either automatically use these agents to, apply the delta or, roll back or roll forward, depending on the state, either automatically, or you can do it manually by doing a detection, right? So those are the primary principles that would enable you to manage your modern infrastructure more efficiently. Now let's look at a level deeper into what are the various parts of GitOps workflows. And how do you manage each of these efficiently, right? So if you look at a typical GitOps workflow, right, it contains like an input mechanism, or your configurations to start with. It can be an app code, it can be infra code, or it can be config management, right? This is basically a way to define your desired state or infrastructure and application, right? And then you define a runtime configuration that you're storing all of these into your Git, and then finally you are using either CI tooling, which is CI tooling for building out your container images, and you put it in the container repository, and at the same time you use CD tooling, continuous deployment tooling, to run tests, deploy to various environments, can be dev, stage, prod, and then all these images are going to be stored into your container registry. And then there is a bunch of like GitOps tools and container orchestration mechanisms to which you're going to deploy containers and the workloads on these containers, right? So first and foremost, if we take a step back, GitOps is basically centered around Git and Kubernetes. So that's the baseline, right? Then how do these two components work together, right? So you have, like we talked about in the previous slide, you have the infrastructure manifest or the configuration that is stored in your Git repository, right? And this manifest is generally, defined using like the plain YAML, right? But you can also use like Helm charts or customized files or JSONnet to define these manifests as well, right? But typically we've seen like most of the customers actually go with YAML to start with, and then as they get more comfortable and they want to get into more complicated or complex requirement, that is when they actually move to different options, right? So that is various parts of your GitOps mechanism, right? And you also need to understand that GitOps tooling, which we talked about earlier, right, supports like more complex workflows, right? Like AB environments or Green Brew deployments, or some people call it canary-based deployments, right? Where you have like multiple versions or multiple environments running in parallel. And you can point all your users to one environment, and you can upgrade or maintain the other environment, and then swap users. So your rollback and roll forward, right, becomes super easy, right? You can have like multiple versions running at a time, and whichever is the one that you want live, can be pointed for the users to manage, right? So that's basically what are the various tooling opportunities for you as part of the GitOps. And then when let's look at like how does AWS takes it like one step further and makes it easier from an adoption standpoint, right? So if you are a AWS customer, right, then you know that you're not just using AWS for Kubernetes or the EKS, but there's a host of services that you can actually use, like messaging or relational databases, or like secret storage, key value stores, right? In conjunction with this containerized workloads. So you basically have like one-stop shop for managing your workload and different set of services that might complete your architecture for your organization, right? So that is where you use AWS and consume a lot of other services like IAM, DynamoDB, S3 storage buckets, Elastic Cache, even like routing or DNS to get like a full-fledged deployment of your workloads, and can be consumed by your customers, right? Now, let's see what happens when the system becomes more and more complex, right? So how do you manage the life cycle of clusters when you have like not tens, not hundreds, but like thousands of these clusters, right? And that is the reality for most of large organizations, right? How do you get observability or visibility into your nodes and clusters, and make sure that the correct information is passed on to service owners or infrastructure owners, right? And how do you apply the same principles for a distributed system as well, which can have like a hybrid deployments? You can have like, let's say you have a very secure database running on-prem, and you have your web server running on containers in cloud, right? How do you apply the same principles on these hybrid environments as well, right? So definitely managing like a complex fleet of clusters is going to be a challenge. And most organizations that we deal with today face this, right? So, and especially when it becomes on-prem plus cloud, right? Because both of them might need different set of policies or principles, and then team needs to have a consistent way of managing it, right? So, and that is where the next set of slides that I'm going to talk about is what Rafae does to enable you like a single pane of glass to manage your hybrid deployment, and also manage multiple types of policies that needs to be applied across various layers of your environments, right? So we also support like on-prem deployments where you can have your clusters running on either VMware, vSphere, or bare metal servers, or even use something called EKS A or EKS D bare metal servers, right? And apply the same GitOps principle in a consistent and easy to understand manner, right? So time for the next poll question. Over to you, Luca.
Launched.
All right, 20 more seconds. Ten. All right, can end this. Thank you. Now that we have seen like the general concepts around GitOps and how can use AWS cloud and how those integrations can be done, right? Now let's jump a little deeper into where I'm coming from and what we do to make it simpler and take down a notch further, right? Come on. All right, so who is Rafae, right? And what do we do? So one of the most common answers that I get is like everyone, when I talk to infra admins or developers alike, what kind of projects are you working on? Everybody's talking about modernization or moving to cloud, right? But then when the moment the conversation turns to Kubernetes, right? Everybody starts talking about complexities around it and challenges, right? And that's where, we face that firsthand. And then we felt like, this is an opportunity for us to help customers remove these complexities around Kubernetes with an enterprise grade SaaS solution. And this is which ties back to the customers that I was talking about, by providing them operations for any distribution anywhere. Doesn't matter what cloud you are on or what kind of on-prem technologies you use, what distribution of Kubernetes you use, right? We support that, right? Now, one of the guiding principles for us is that we want to help customers accelerate their infrastructure and application modernization journey into this containerized world by providing essential features around automation, security, visibility, governance, you name it, right? And then with these principles in mind, we have made GitOps adoption seamless for our customers. And we'll see what feature that we have launched recently, and then how it is being used by customers. Very high level, right? So we will dive a bit deeper to understand like what are the different benefits using Rafae's Kubernetes management platform, and also like the GitOps service that we have developed. So here, like if you see in this diagram, the Git becomes the single source of truth, and we have an integrated pipeline which kind of runs on a controller, and then you can garner the benefits of automation, reliability, compliance, to various reigning complexities, and make it super easy for you to manage your environments. Right. So next I'll talk about the actual feature where we have leveraged the GitOps principles and then made it easier for our customers to consume it and also reap the benefits. So we call it System Sync, GitOps System Sync, where it's as simple as this, right? You have a Git repository on one end, you have your clusters, EKS clusters running on Rafae, right? And we are connecting them through various multi-stage pipelines, and we are defining a system state, right? That is the desired state. Now, there is an internal trigger on the Rafae side, and there is an external trigger on the Git repository side. Whichever change, wherever there is a change, that leads to an approval process. And once it is approved by the relevant party, it syncs the state. What I mean by is, in the Git repository, for example, you are deleting a cluster, right, through the code. And you commit that code and it gets approved. What automatically this pipeline is going to do is, through an agent, it's going to delete the cluster on the Rafae side. Or on the Rafae side, let's say on the cluster, instead of 2 nodes, you made it 100 nodes. And it goes through an approval process. And once somebody approves it, it calls the internal trigger, and then the same number of nodes is applied on the config file on the Git repository, and the commit is happened. right? So that's as simple as that. But then obviously, like, nothing is so simple, right? So it contains a few steps. And if you look at the flow, what we are doing here is, again, this is not super complex, right? We start with creating a GitOps agent where we establish that connection. Then we create that repository, and through a webhook, you can connect your repository and your Rafae environment. And then we're gonna add that GitHub repo to Rafae to establish this connection and seamless commits happening up across. And then the pipeline, you can create a multi-stage pipeline, which I'm gonna do as part of demo. And then once you have the pipeline established, that's it, right? And as part of the system sync, any changes you do from system gets synced to Git and vice versa. We call it system to Git and Git to system sync, right? It's a two-way process. That way your single source of truth is always valid, right? Any changes done, there is no drift, because we automatically reconcile through an approval mechanism and finally show you the consistent environments and your code, right? So let's quickly jump to a demo, and let me share my screen. Give me a second. Share. All right. All right, I hope you can see my screen here, right? Oops, sorry. Okay, so this is the Rafae console, and in the infrastructure, I have a cluster, and this is running on EKS. So if I go to my AWS console, these are the two node groups that are running. And then I have a Git repository, right? So where I have this YAML file, which represent the state of my cluster, right? So it has like the T3.extra large as the instance types, 4 nodes maximum, 0 minimum, and multiple other things. It's running on West 2. This is the cluster name. There's a version. You can make any changes to this config file, and then the same gets applied here, right? So these are the 2 nodes that I have. If you look at my node group, there are like two nodes that are running currently, minimum of 0 and maximum of 4, right? And then let's start with agents, right? So I have an agent that I have pre-configured, and this agent is the one that establishes the trigger-based actions, and then performs those actions on both Git and as well as my clusters. Then as I go to my repositories, so you can see this repository. This is my endpoint, right? And if you see, yeah, so this is my project, and yeah, so this is my endpoint, right? And then comes the pipelines, right? So I have a pipeline I have created here, okay? And if I show you, so this is basically a 2-stage pipeline. One is an approval mechanism, the other one is a syncing mechanism. And I have enabled Git to system sync here and system to Git as well. So any changes that happens at the cluster level, gets merged on either sides. And we support a lots of various resources as well, both at the app layer as well as the infra layer. Like, any changes to your repository, any changes to your workload templates, cluster overrides, or blueprints can all get synced as well, right? Here for demo, like I've just selected cluster for now. And then let's see, let's actually go to our cluster. And here I have, right? So I have 2 nodes that are currently active now, right? So 2 nodes, right? Let's go to our file. Okay, so this is our file. I'm going to edit this and change the number of active instances from 2 to 3. So I'm changing the desired capacity to 3, right? I'm going to commit changes, right? Now, when I go back to my Rafae console, I go back to my pipelines, I see that there is an approval pending, because this is a write into my system, right? And I don't want anybody to just go commit some faulty change and that breaking the system. So I will look at what was the what was really happening, and then I approve this change, right? Now this moved the action to the system sync, and if we see that the system sync performed successfully as well, right? We go back to our cluster and then go back to our node group. Now you can see that number of nodes has changed to 3. It's going to take a few seconds for it to bring up a new node, but then you can see that it is instantaneous pretty much, right? Takes about 30 seconds for it to bring up a new node and show it here. And if I scale node group, let's say I make it 2 again, right? So we have it at 3 now. Now I'm going to scale it down to 2, right? Now this will obviously trigger another approval mechanism, right? So say approve, right? Now we go back here and refresh our repo, and you can see that the desired capacity has changed to 2, right? So that is what, and you can apply this same functionality to any of your feature that I talked about earlier as well, right? All right. Okay, so let's go to Q&A, and before that, I'll just move to the next slide. And here are some options for you to learn more about GitOps for EKS and what we do from Rafae's perspective. You can always sign up for a demo, and you can also start for a 7-day trial. You can play around with our system at no cost and see if this is something that you would want to implement as part of your environments as well. More than happy to help you. All right, so we have a few questions. Okay, Marek said, while two-way sync of configuration might be helpful when you have already running infra or apps and you want to transform that into config files in Git repo, isn't that Git should be the single source of truth? Not that, oh yeah, like great question, Marek. So one of the things that I missed telling is, what we recommend is that once you have an existing environment which has your infra and apps running, the first step is to do a system to Git. That way, you have an actual capture of your systems in the repository, and then enable because the first sync is always a manual, and we always tell customers to do a system to Git if the repository doesn't exist. Right? That way you are capturing the actual truth. But if you do the other way around, right? In the code, you might not have captured all the config elements, and that might lead to a disaster. But then as part of a review process, you can catch it if you are performing a nuclear option there as well. All right. All right. So why should we choose Rafae or Rancher? Oh, great question. Let me give you a link to why our customers actually do that. It's not just me who's telling you, but Rafae versus Rancher. You see, that's the first result. Okay. All right. So let me put that in chat for you guys and see for yourself why our customers are doing it. We have one of the largest fintech actually doing that. They were a Rancher shop in the past, and then they moved away from Rancher and joined us. So that's that. And then All right. Tiziano says, does Rafae solution works with any kind of deployment solution? Absolutely. Absolutely, Tiziano. It works with all of this that you talked about, Helm charts, operators. Go through the docs.rafae.co. You will see everything that we support. And also if you're interested, we can share our roadmap as well for the next 1 year. What are the new features that new integration that you are bringing in as well. All right, and Marek, next question. Is there a way to block the system to Git sync by admin? Oh yeah, absolutely. So let me go to that. So if you see your GitOps pipelines, right, you can see this, right? Not everybody can enable and disable this. This needs to be done by a specific RBAC role.
I think I'm only seeing the slides.
Oh, you're only, oh, shoot.
Yeah,
okay. All right. Thanks for catching that. Okay. So like I was saying, if you see these options, right? Git to system sync and system to Git sync, not everybody can enable and disable these. Like I am a super admin on this environment, so I can do all of these, right? But you need to have a specific RBAC role defined. Only then you can actually do that. All right. All right. Next question. How multiple stage environments fit into the workflow? Can we use the same set of config promote to? Oh, yes, you can do that as well. Yes, Gary, you can do that. Siva Kumar, how difficult is it that implement the cluster add-ons and scaling and pods? Super simple. Go through our documentation and you will find that it's easier to do it. And that's why customers are coming to us, right? Where we are absorbing all the complexity and making it as simple as like click, 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 or run a one-line command to enable most of these things that would otherwise take you like an hour to do. All right. How is this different from crossplane? I'm not an expert on crossplane, so I'm not sure, Vinay, but we can definitely get back to you on the Slack channel on the differences. And Shiva, can I manage sources like RDS S3 buckets using Rafae config? Yes, you can. If they are part of your cluster configurations, you can. I don't know if it was specifically for system sync or not, but we definitely let you, one of the common backup strategies that we recommend is using S3 buckets, and you can do that configuration using Rafae console. Okay, what sync engine are you using? Is it Argo CD or is it on your own? It is the the standard Git sync that we're using. We're not using Argo CD. This is something that we have built on Git. Are we bypassing the PRs as we do source control? So everything is. So we are not bypassing PRs. We are bypassing PRs only from for the demo purpose. You can still have PRs enabled on both sides so that an approval needs to be done at Rafae as well as on the GitHub. So just to make it easy for us to quickly run through the demo, I bypass that. Can you implement policies to allow commits to be immediately deployed if they are within limits rather than always wait for manual? You can. So if you look at my screen, right? So what I have done is I have enabled an approval stage as well, an approval trigger as well. And here I said, like, I define myself as an approver. That is the reason every time I have to go and manually approve it. You can always remove approvers and action. You don't need approval stage at all. If you don't have the approval stage, it is automatically done. I hope that answers, Chad.
Hey, Praveen, we got a question in the chat as well by Yasker. How does Rafae compare to Argo?
Argo is, I would say, think of Rafae as a superset of a lot more things than what Argo does. I mean, like it's not even fair to compare what Rafae does to Argo. So I would say it's a superset of what Argo does.
Got it. We also have a question on the YouTube stream. So Shir is asking, the declarative principle. So according to the declarative principle, having a system that fetches secrets using tools such as Customize and Helm would go against such principle, as there are imperative processes to achieve the desired state. And as in follows up saying, I understand that this is one of the 4 GitOps principles. So
sure. So see, here is the construct behind this, right? So this is like, so think of this as a piecemeal configuration. You can implement all the controls on it to make it as secure and as complex possible. I just made it super simple. I eliminated a lot of complexities around to quickly show you how the end-to-end flow works. However, in a production environment, I would never do this, right? Like I would actually have a lot more controls on it. I would define like who can do what. I cannot be an approver when I am the one who's triggering, right? So a lot of these things can be enabled on the system sync, so that you don't need to worry about whether you're going against the standard principles or even the security guidelines of your organization. So don't take this as like the flow, right? But like I said, where I was showing you like various options, it means that you can do a lot more configuration on top to to meet the way that you want to implement it on your organizational environments, right? All right, Igor, how is it possible to manage secrets in, for example, AWS Secrets Manager via GitOps? How setup will look like? Should secrets be created in Kubernetes and then some tool? Okay, yeah, so not a straightforward implementation, right? So we do support, we are coming up with something called Secrets Manager integration in our next release. That would enable that integration seamlessly with AWS Secrets Manager to Rafae. And then once we have that integration enabled, you can consume that through GitOps. But even before that implementation, you can still, like you were mentioning, you can still make it part of the Kubernetes configuration and then use it as part of your GitOps pipeline. Rajesh, when someone is approving the request, does it show what change is requested in the Rafae screen? Yes, it does. It does show what change is requested. And then our next version of System Sync, which is going to come up in 2 months' time, we'll have a more detailed logging information, including certain elements that we didn't feel were as important today. But then think of this as like an entire log and history of what is happening as part of an approval process. Jaskaran, does Rafae handle decrypting secrets at rest? Secrets that are encrypted in Git repos, for example. No, it's not an out-of-box functionality, but you need to use a decrypt mechanism to do that on runtime. You have to run any GitOps agents inside your infra, asking from a security perspective. Great question, Marek. One of the things that we are proud to talk about in the market is something called a Zero Trust Kubectl Access, ZTKA. And what it means is you are running an agent, but it is a one-way traffic, right? So we don't have any access to your environment at all, even though there is an agent running. Our controller, think of this as a push mechanism from agent to controller, and you define what needs to be, what can be shared. So we don't have access to the data layer at all, only the control plane for performing all these operational activities. So no absolute zero access onto the data layer at all. So you don't need to worry about security, because some of these healthcare and fintech organizations that are running Rafe's product on their production environments have super stringent security guidelines, and we check all these boxes. And we are also a SOC 2 compliant product. So I don't think that'll be any problem at all.
All right. Do we have
That's
one
awesome,
more?
guys. Like Luca, I love it. Like, so many questions, and also, they were relevant to everybody.
Rapid fire. It's been great. And
Yeah,
I want to be mindful of time. I know we've been running over 10 minutes already. So if there's not any last minute questions, I think we can wrap it up. Praveen, thank you so much for your time. This is super informative, really interesting. I think people really enjoyed it. So thanks for doing this. Thanks everybody for sticking around the whole time. And we'll follow up tomorrow with an email with those links. And we'll catch you at the next event.
Thanks, Luca. Thanks for making it happen. And thanks everyone for joining us and sharing your thoughts as well.
Sounds good. Thank you, Praveen.